Hi, everybody. I think we are live now. It's great to be here. We actually have one more panelist who is working her way onto the live stage, so she will be joining hopefully just within the next minute or so. But we'll start by introducing ourselves and sharing a little bit about who we are and what we're here to chat about today. So I'll kick things off. My name is Jill Olson. I am the Director of Operations and Professional Development for EIE at the Museum of Science in Boston. EIE is a pre-K through grade 8 STEM curricula focusing on engineering and computer science. And the Museum of Science is a centuries-old institution located in the heart of Boston, Massachusetts. I will be our moderator today for our panel, which is titled Growing the Future STEM Workforce Pipeline. So the group that we have here to really explore this topic and help all of us learn a little bit more about how school districts and corporations and organizations can work together to grow this workforce pipeline. We have Jess Anderson, who is the Director of Strategic Giving at Dell Technologies. And we also have Dr. Annette Venegas, who is the Science Program Specialist for Kent School District in the Seattle, Washington area. While we wait for our third panelist to join, Jess, could I ask you to just share with us all a little bit more about yourself and the role you play at Dell?
Sure. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. So I am currently based just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and my team is responsible for our global strategic giving programs. And so right now that's really focused on those programs globally that are targeting underserved communities to help build that future workforce, help provide those skills that we're going to talk about today and the rest of the panel. So again, very excited to be here and thank you very much.
Thanks, Jess. And Annette, can I ask you to just share a little bit about yourself as well?
Sure. I am a science and STEM instructional specialist with Kent School District in Washington. We're about 20 miles south of Seattle. This is my 30th year as an educator. I've had the privilege of being a user and a trainer for Engineering is Elementary modules since 2007. But for Kent School District, we were the recipient of a Dell grant, and that has brought exciting and exceptional changes to our science and STEM program starting in kindergarten.
Thank you, Annette. So the three who are here right now, it's actually a really great triad because EIE at the Museum of Science develops this curriculum, and through the support of Dell, the curriculum was able to be a part of Annette's district, where the educators had professional development and the students got to engage with the hands-on engineering. Once we get going, I am confident that Lina Klebanov will be able to join us, so we'll pause and ask her to say a few words as well. But I can share with you now that Lina is the head of corporate social responsibility at Tata Consultancy Services. So again, pardon us for pausing when she jumps on board, but I definitely want to be sure we have the chance to introduce her. So a big thank you to the STEM Leadership Alliance for welcoming us today and giving us this opportunity to have this really important discussion that I hope everybody learns a little bit something new here. I'm confident that I will. So the principles of the STEM Leadership Alliance are so closely related to the topic that we're here to chat about today. Their three principles are that integrated STEM education should advance the learning of each individual STEM discipline. It should provide logical and authentic connections between and across the individual STEM disciplines, and it should serve as a bridge to STEM careers. Hi, Kelly. We're going to keep on going until we have Lina on board.
I'm bringing her in.
No worries. We are being really creative and crafty here to bring Lina to the stage. So a few thoughts that we will be exploring in our conversation today. How do we grow the future STEM workforce pipeline? And what does it mean to be workforce ready for tomorrow? What are the specific skills and mindsets that we believe will be the most important for tomorrow's workforce? And how can schools prepare today's students for today's realities and tomorrow's jobs? Layered on top of that, how can organizations like TCS, where Lina is from, and Dell Technologies, who Jess is representing today, help to grow that workforce pipeline? I see we're so close with Lina, but let's jump in with our first question. So we live in a rapidly changing world. Technologies such as automation and artificial intelligence are increasing productivity, improving lives, and reshaping economies, societies, and the ways in which we interact. change is happening at an unprecedented rate, and we cannot even predict the jobs that most of our kids will fill. So first question specifically for you, Annette, if you don't mind, how equipped do you believe school districts are to prepare students for tomorrow's world? Some things to think about, what's working well, and where can corporate sponsors like Dell and TCS support school districts in preparing our students for tomorrow?
Thank you. I think, honestly, many of the systems we have in place right now in education are outdated for the needs of today's society. I've taught in 3 different states, 4 if you count my time as a preschool teacher. And in every case, the emphasis has always been learning skills, the skill of reading, the skill of math. And content is taught in silos rather than integrated, say, through social studies or science, where it's the application of the skill that's more important than the skill itself. But we need students who are curious problem solvers, who ask questions and then create solutions. So how do we accomplish this? We need to integrate intentionally and with a purpose. We empower students to be problem solvers, risk takers, and see failure as just another way that something didn't work. In my district, I do this through problem-based learning units. Students have voice and choice. I also use materials that already incorporate these qualities, such as the Engineering is Elementary units. And as I mentioned earlier, we were fortunate to receive a grant through Dell, whereby we received multiple units and the training for teachers. And without this corporate sponsorship, it would not have been possible.
Thanks, Annette. And we'll definitely dig into the specific sponsorship and support that Dell gave to your district. But and first of all, yes, your pre-K years absolutely count. I know at EIE, we are big believers that the younger you can start with this mindset changing and helping all students see themselves in STEM, the better set for success you are. But specifically, you talked about helping your students become problem solvers and encouraging that curiosity and that comfort with failure. So Jess, I'm wondering from your perspective, how do you define workforce readiness? What are the types of skills that you feel are really, crucial for today's students to have tomorrow?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm very happy to hear about how well the EIE programs are going on in Kent. So thank you for that. So for me, workforce readiness is the ability for people to be nimble, to be able to collaborate with others, think outside of the box, have a willingness to learn, and the ability to really communicate in both written and verbal formats, and understanding who your audience is so that at a moment's notice, you're providing the correct message to the correct audience. Ultimately, if young people have this willingness to learn and they are taught that and foster that at a very early age, when it comes time to transition to careers that don't exist today or learn new skills, it's not going to be as big of an issue of the, oh my goodness, I can't do this, because they're already used to figuring out how to stretch themselves and have continuous learning. I think it's also imperative to think about how our technologies of today and the future are impacting our society, both positively and negatively, and helping young people understand and actually figure out what they can do on their own to make the world a better place as well. So to me, those are some of the key pieces of being workforce ready.
Yeah.
And Jill, I just want to chime in to say that Lina is on. We do not see her picture, but we do have her voice.
Whoops, sorry, it just dropped for a minute there. But do we have Lina now?
Yes, we do.
I'm here.
Hi, Lina. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure.
So, Lina, we are a little bit into our first question, but we gave everybody listening today a heads up that when you were able to join us, we'd do a quick pause so you could introduce yourself. So, Jess Anderson, the Director of Strategic Giving at Dell Technologies, and Dr. Annette Venegas, the Science Program Specialist for Kent School District in the Seattle, Washington area, have already introduced themselves. So could you please just share a little bit about who you are and the role you play at TCS?
Absolutely. And my apologies for the technical issues. Hi, everyone. My name is Lina Klebanov, and I have the privilege of leading our corporate social responsibility function for North America at Tata Consultancy Services. Hopefully some of you or all of you are familiar with TCS. TCS is an IT services consulting and business solutions organization. We've been operating for over 50 years now, over 22 billion in revenue, almost 450,000 employees worldwide, representing 50 countries and 144 nationalities. And we're one of the nation's largest job creators in the technology sector. Our mission in CSR is to connect people to opportunities in the digital economy, really to build equitable, inclusive pathways for women, youth, and underserved and under-resourced communities, really looking through a lens of access, equity, and inclusion. I'm really looking forward to this conversation and joining my colleagues on this virtual panel.
Thank you, Lina. We're so happy you're here. Your voice and your work are so important to this conversation. And I have to point out that because right now, Jess and Annette were sort of defining what workforce readiness means. And some of the pieces that they talked about were, Jess thinking outside the box and communication, and Annette finding some comfort in failure and that grit to try again. And I just think that really speaks to having Lina here right now, because we were backstage and we were troubleshooting and we were going back and forth to try to get Lina onto this call. And Kelly, who was our phenomenal organizer of the event, came up with this great workaround to have Lina Zoom in through her computer, and none of us stopped trying in about the 45 minutes it took us to get here. So I actually think that that's a really nice illustration of everything that Jess and Annette are really making the case for, that those are the types of skills and ways of thinking that we really want to help our students embrace, right? So we can be ready to solve these unpredictable problems of tomorrow. So Lina, I'll kind of put you on the spot then. Annette had, in walking us through her career, she noted that she started off by teaching pre-K learners. And we're talking about really developing that STEM workforce for tomorrow. Lina, I'm curious about your thoughts on why it's important to focus on young learners, elementary school and even ahead of elementary school, those pre-K and kindergarten learners, when we're talking about and thinking about workforce readiness, right? Rather than jumping right in at that high school level.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm happy to feel that. So 65% of children who are entering grade school today will be employed by jobs that don't currently exist by the time they graduate. So that's all augmented by the fact that digital fluency, a learning trend that is only going to accelerate in the coming decade. And as a global technology company and an industry leader, we know that computational thinking and digital fluency are critical for success across careers in all sectors. And the fundamentals of computational thinking provide key strategies to solve any given challenge. So it's really important by teaching students to solve problems using the same components as a computer, we're preparing them for bright futures where they can combine that creativity with computational thinking for that ultimate success. And the sooner that students start learning this way of thinking and the elements of computational thinking, we start as early as kindergarten. So it's I used to say that someday every company will be a technology company, but COVID really sped that up, and every company right now is a technology company, and our kids need to learn that digital fluency and those computational thinking skills to be successful in any sector, in any element of the work that they do. Long-winded answer. Very passionate about that.
No such thing as long-winded. It's a treat to get to hear your insights there. You mentioned computational thinking a bit. So Annette, I'd like to go back to you, thinking about, or recognizing the fact that computer science, technological and data literacy, computational thinking, those are relatively new phrases and concepts, I think, in the elementary school space right now. And so what are some things that you, from your perspective, that a district leader can really do to ensure that their students are ready to start learning about and working with those skills? And what can they do sort of today, and where could they use some support to really go all the way?
Thank you. So I'm going to start with teachers. As teachers, we have the opportunity to be the guide in our students' education, and we need to start unleashing their creative potential. And in the world that's changing constantly, as Lina just mentioned, we don't want to prepare students for something. We want to prepare them for anything, for any possible situation. And in the traditional school system, we always think about compliance in a classroom. But I think where one of the changes is that we need to start inspiring innovation, providing authentic learning experiences, and practical ways to empower students. So you asked about district leaders. Part of it is improving a school culture. And so starting with digital technology that Lina was mentioning, there's a huge gap between teachers who integrate technology and those who don't. And this pandemic and the remote learning in schools really brought that to the forefront. And so I was thinking, why? Why is there this huge gap? Well, there's fear. Implementation is scary if you've never used it. Some teachers have a low self-efficacy, and so they just don't have a belief in their own ability. And they'd rather say, I can't do it, than try. And we'll get back to something about that later. And then just feeling overwhelmed at how many programs are out there. And then, honestly, it's lack of district support. I know in my district in Kent, our district did supply devices to every student in the district, and they provided remote hotspots for internet service. And that was a great start. But there's still huge gaps because teacher preparation for digital technology use and parental knowledge and parental support, we learned that both teachers and parents felt absolutely inadequately prepared to support students with digital technology. Something as easy as uploading or downloading a document became a huge obstacle. So one of the things I would start with is that district leaders could provide learning opportunities for teachers and parents, possibly even in a side-by-side model where parents see that teachers are learners and teachers see parents as learners, and then train them on the programs that are used and supported by the district. And I think that would be a huge start.
Thank you, Annette. And what strikes me is that so much of what you're sharing is really about the adults who are involved here, right? It's thinking about the families at home, the district leaders, and those educators. It's not always just about what the students are interacting with, but it's about the supports that they will get to, and the guidance that they'll get from their educators who are supported by the district leaders and from their families at home. So Jess, I'm curious for your perspective as you're listening to Annette and you're hearing about some of the obstacles that school districts face. How does that connect to what organizations like Dell Technologies really looks for when they're, seeking to support, school districts or other organizations to really develop this pipeline?
Yeah, so I think for us, there are a couple things. I think the answer will depend on where the business is located and how large the business is. For us, one of the key things that we're looking at is the ability to scale. We are a huge company, and we have a huge global footprint as Lina and TCS. And so, who are those program partners that we can work with one partner and have the same level of interaction the way that we have done with our support with EIE? The Kent Washington School Districts is one of several that we've been able to support, and so that's key. The other piece that we look to is what are the programs actually focusing on? Is it focusing on Excel and how to do PowerPoints, which are important, but when you really think about the future of work, my oldest son figured out how to do Zoom backgrounds before my husband did, and nobody taught him. So those types of things kids will get easily. But what are those other types of tangible future workforce skills that a program could be teaching? We want to make sure that we are providing support to those. As students get older, we also want to look at what are some of those programs that are providing certifications or micro-badging or even school systems that are supporting dual enrollment with colleges, because the reality is a four-year college is just not the path for every student, and that's fine. That doesn't mean there's not a place for them. And so how can we support and showcase the different paths that are possible, even by having, whether it be virtual or in person, panels where you have people who have different walks of life, come from different places, have different jobs, talk to young people about what it is they're doing, how they got there, just demystifying all of it so that it gives them someone to look up to, someone who has perhaps walked in similar shoes, to give them something to aim for in the future.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I'm curious that piece about really helping students, I think, just to sort of paraphrase, seeing themselves in something beyond what they're doing and working on in that classroom right now, whether that's through a curriculum or a field trip or a discussion with somebody who might be working in a field that they've thought about, or maybe even more importantly, they've never thought about. They didn't know that that was something out there for them.
Yeah, and I would add, if I could, even though we are in this role of virtual and, field trips are not taking place, there are still ways you can connect with companies that are in your area. From a company perspective, we want to make sure all kids are safe. So we want to follow rules, guidelines, adults, but ask your local business partners, can we set up a virtual tour or a virtual conversation with some of your employees so that my kids can kind of see what's going on, even in the craziness of this world, that there still are places that you can work and still continue to grow. So.
Yeah, and in some ways, maybe there are even more possibilities, right? When you're taking away some geographical barriers to visiting places and having conversations. Mm-hmm. Lina, I would love your perspective on this, just the different ways. We've talked about so many different ways that corporations can ultimately reach a student, whether that's through the support of a curriculum or professional development for educators, or working directly with school districts to just sort of share different, career stories and pathways. What are some of the, approaches or philosophies that TCS holds in this realm?
Absolutely, and thank you. I wish everyone can see me nodding profusely. We launched a program a couple of years ago in partnership with Discovery Education called Ignite My Future in School, and it really speaks to everything Jessica and Annette were just talking about, really focusing on professional development for teachers, using computational thinking as a catalyst to really transform education. The program is it's a professional development curriculum for middle school teachers, but really designed as a transdisciplinary approach to introduce computer science within the context of core subjects like English, math, social studies, even physical education, your non-computer science classes, so that it's not yet another thing that we're looking to bring into an already saturated classroom, but rather an entire curriculum that's aligned to standards, ELA, math, K through 12 computer science standards, all linked to all the respective testing and guidelines to really help teachers teach their existing curriculum. It was really important for us as we were developing this program that this wouldn't be another thing to stress teachers out, but rather a tool to help them. And that's why, in addition to we have two different ways in which you can be part of the program. We have a high touch and a low touch. And the high touch is in-person actual PD, although now, of course, everything is virtual, but also all of the content, the curriculum, the vignettes, the videos, everything is available open source online to anyone, parents, teachers, students, educators. It's all of our programs are free of cost and accessible to anyone who wants to have access to the curriculum. And so far, we've reached over 670,000 students and almost 12,000 educators. And it's one of the key elements of success for this program is that it enables educators, administrators, and school districts to be those ambassadors of the transdisciplinary approach.
It's remarkable that you're mentioning, Lina, and I think that it evidences that you and Jess share that that value of scalability, right? With wherever it is or however you're supporting, it's just got to be scalable. And I really appreciate, Lina, that you commented that it can't just be another thing to put on top of educators. It's really got to sort of transcend disciplines. And this brings us back to something that Annette, you had mentioned earlier on in our panel about the importance of having truly integrated curriculum. So you're helping the students and the educators really make sense of how everything ties in. So it's not about the topics or the content per se, but it's about developing these skills. Mm-hmm. And I want to acknowledge that, Jess and Dell have supported EIE, our pre-K through 8 engineering curriculum in districts across the country for the last several years. And Annette is part of a district that has been a recipient of that support. So Annette, can I ask you to just sort of speak a bit to what that has looked like? I'd love to hear about what you can state are some of the short-term benefits and impacts of that. And then what you predict the long-term impacts of EIE in the district through Dell support might be.
So the short-term impact was that we received 24 engineering as elementary units in the classrooms during the 2019-2020 school year. And teachers were provided exceptional teacher training. During the training, they had lots of hands-on experiences. They were allowed to ask questions. So they were empowered to actually use the units. I would say about 18 of the teachers actually got to the units this year. The other thing that was provided is we were given the choice. Which units did we want? Dell nor EIE said, these are the units you need to use. We were said, which ones do you want? So teacher had choice, and I think that was huge as well. Students actually emailed their teachers who emailed me and said that the students related to the kids in the book. So for an example, I'll just use a couple. Emily, who lives on a sheep farm. A lot of them thought that was a real practical reason to learn about circuitry because they saw themselves in her. I also had the opportunity to work in a kindergarten classroom, and the teacher asked if I would please introduce the story of Danny the duck, and they're going to be cleaning up trash. But just after reading the story, not delving into what's the problem or anything else, the kindergartners started looking at me saying, we can help Danny, we can solve problems, and I need to step back a bit. In this class, we actually started every science lesson by singing We Are Engineers, which is a song that empowers kids to say, we can be problem solvers, we can create. And so it's really exciting to see when you believe in children and when you lift them up, what can they do? Now you asked about the long term. That's going to be a little bit harder simply because of the pandemic, because buildings were closed, and because there's such a range of possibilities of how schools are going to open. But teacher response has been so strong with using the EIE modules that many have asked, can we get a different one for this year? And since I have 24 to choose from, I can rotate them. And some teachers have said, no, I'd love to use the one I used last year because I've got new and better ways that I can integrate more and that I can involve more students. Honestly, it was the funding that we received that was absolutely instrumental in our district getting this. We have 28 elementary schools, and to be honest, funding at the district level for science is very limited. So to provide teachers, and thank you again, Dell, that we were given the highest quality instructional materials, training, online resources, replacement components, and I get constant support from EIE. Without this, none of these long-term sustainability would be possible. So as it stands right now, our teachers, if we have in-time classroom, the kids are going to use the units and do problem solving when they're in person. Then any of the reading, writing, and mathematical components can be done easily at home or online. But the hands-on, where they actually are building prototypes, they're going to be doing that within the classroom.
And I really was struck in that when you shared that your young learners, pre-K and kindergarten, are coming to you to say, we are problem solvers, because that's something that I hear at EIE in the Museum of Science all the time from my colleagues. And Lina and Jess, I'm sure that's a statement that you expect to hear and do hear from your colleagues, because that's what we all set out to do, especially in the last few months. It kind of boils down to becoming a problem solver. And that you shared a lot about what you're seeing in your students, but also what you're seeing in their educators. So Jess, from Dell's perspective, how do you think about that? How important is that you're impacting not just the learners, right, those students in the classroom, but you're also having impact on the educators that they're working with that year and will go on to work with students year after year?
Well, I would love this recording to share with our marketing team to talk. That if you're open to that, and I did not pay you to say any of that. But I mean, it's really wonderful to hear. So the way that that we set this up, we did a pilot first in Massachusetts several years ago with a school district called Worcester, which is about 45 minutes outside of Boston, underserved, high level of underserved students. And so, as we think about how we do things, like we as Dell can't do it all. Lina and Tata can't do it all. We all have to come together and figure out how can we provide the support that's needed? How can we create this ecosystem? And so, we figured that let's target some of these communities that have the demographic that's important to us. And really, we know they're interested in EIE. They just need help. Just need a little bit, a little push. And so providing that seed funding and those seed grants. And so, for me, it's great to hear that it wasn't just us thinking that it would be really important to the school districts, but to hear Annette actually talking about what it's meant to the teachers and to the students. And then, I can take that back to my leadership as we look at how we fund programs and whatnot, and say, like, look, this is actually working. It has the intended impact. And hopefully, other companies that are close to, Kent, Washington, and other places, take a look at this and think about ways that even if you don't have a lot of funding available, there's still something that you can do just to help, get a school district over the hump so they can at least see and have some of the access that some of the more resource schools do have, so that all students actually can have an ability to learn and understand that you can be an engineer, you can be a computer scientist. It doesn't matter your background, if you are otherwise able, like it doesn't matter. But if they're not exposed, there's no way for them to know or have those dreams.
And I know that in developing the curriculum, those were some of our highest values, right? And so it's so exciting to find not only that, and that, school districts like yours are seeing that come to fruition, but that's also a value shared by organizations like Dell. And Jess, I really appreciate that you said no one can do it all, right? No one educator can do it all. No one organization can do it all. And so, Dell does its part by really seeking out these high needs communities that may not otherwise be able to bring in the curriculums that they're seeking to bring in. Lina, I'm curious how you would describe sort of, what does TCS view as, its mission, its most, high impact way that they can support?
Jess set me up perfectly. I do. I wanted to mention that it's not just a STEM skills gap. We're also addressing the opportunity, the belief, and the confidence gaps that exist. And the earlier on that we could work with students, the more that we can address that. Because again, if you can't see it, you can't see it, to Jess's point. So our signature employee engagement program, we actually launched over 10 years ago. And this program is where our own associates teach computer science concepts and mentor youth to increase STEM education and career awareness. We work with middle and high school students, but we've done the program with younger kids as well, as young as kindergarten age. And it's the program is incredible, not because of the curriculum, although don't tell that to our going semester. The curriculum is awesome and fabulous, but the beautiful thing about the program are all the different elements that encompass it. The focus on design thinking and empathy and creating a technology solution to help solve a real world problem that's helping to advance the sustainable development goal or goals. So students early on are learning about all these different concepts around what actually goes into creating a technology solution and the end user and the design and accessibility and all of these different elements that are really creativity and innovation and the apps that they're all using. Their Androids, there was a lot of work behind the scenes, and they're learning that early on, coupled with the employability skills of presenting in public and pitching and collaborating in teams. So ultimately, students are presenting their technology solution to a panel of judges, all about while having been mentored by a TCS associate who is helping them with their own solution, as well as talking about their own career in technology. Because if you ask any middle schooler or high schooler, or probably most adults, what a developer or a programmer or coder or engineer does, it would be hard for them to really define that. Plus, there are so many other careers in technology that we want students to know and be exposed to and learn about. So going back to the different components of the program, where we're training the teachers who are ultimately facilitating the program, our associates are mentoring both the students and the teachers, and then the students are presenting their solution. So it's been really cool to see the evolution of this program, and we also do a pre and post survey, and students are really excited after the program is done, which is one of the reasons why we were thinking about, well, what's that next? How do we create something that will allow students and teachers to continue on that momentum? Because the program is, let's say, 12 to 20 hours, and it could be administered during a school day, after school, could be tailored any way the teacher or the educator wants, but what next? So that was one of the reasons why we developed Ignite My Future in School, because we wanted to have this content and curriculum that teachers can then continue to use in the classroom. So it's, now especially with remote learning, we were really able to pivot quickly and have all of our programs available online, as well as create a virtual mentoring component that goes along with it.
And I love, Lina, that
I did want to emphasize the mentoring piece, because I think we haven't really spoken about the importance of that, and it's our engagement programs really do revolve around that.
And it really does sort of map out how different organizations can take different approaches to supporting. And I love that, Lina, you're calling out that I think what you're really demystifying these subjects like engineering and computer science. And I think that it may take some people off guard for a moment to think about those fields as being fields that really require creativity and collaboration and communication and empathy, especially. So it's so exciting to hear that through your mentorship, you're really walking through that. And Annette, I'm wondering, through Dell's support, you had the curriculum and the professional development in the classrooms. How do you describe the importance of the mentorship component, right? I'm so thrilled that you and Jess are here together to most likely meet for the first time, which is, we should try to figure out some other ways to go about this and connect you all. But what are your thoughts on that, sort of stepping outside of the classroom and the curriculum and the professional development and giving your students and educators that opportunity to have direct face time, whether it be virtual or on site, and get that mentoring?
I agree. Mentoring is huge. And in some ways, so like I said, I've been using EIE since 2007. So one of the things is that I know the modules, and I was able to mentor teachers. Although EIE did the initial training, and I've shown teachers where they can go online to get support. As the instructional specialist, they know that they can call me at any time and say, hey, I need help with this. And so I meet with teachers and I mentor teachers. But what I want teachers to do is I want them to be not just teaching students, I want them to be mentoring students. I want them to show students that they are the problem solvers. Give them that growth mindset to say, yeah, we can do this. Emphasizing not what a final grade is, but emphasizing effort that's put in and persistence. And so when we have students who can be persistent with problem solving, then it almost naturally leads to sustainability, because it's not just, can I problem solve in my engineering unit, but can I stick with that math problem? Can I really dig deeper into this historical fact? Can I also sustain with social emotional concepts, like solving problems for themselves, but also learning, how do I reach out when I need help, and who do I reach out to as a mentor? So yeah, the whole idea of mentorship and sustainability is huge to the success of any program. I'm really glad it was brought up, because to be honest, I'm actually taking a course on mentorship. Even though I've been doing this for years, I thought there's always more to learn. So as I improve, then I can model what does it mean to be a mentor, and what are the strategies we use. But I think it's something that needs to be emphasized, and mentorship needs to go beyond 1 year. It needs to be something that is sustainable, 2, 3, even up to 5 years, if we want to see teachers really feel supported and empowered.
I think even the concept of mentorship and instilling in your students that you will always be a learner, and it's important that you always have that goal, or that thing that you're working on, and that there are always helpers out there and supporters out there for you. I want to switch gears a little bit in the last few minutes we have. I saw a question in the discussion, somebody who would love to hear from the folks on the panel suggestions for how to reach out to corporate partners and engage in these types of supportive relationships. And in the case of with Annette and Dell, EIE was sort of that connector. So I would love to hear from each of you, maybe just a minute or so each, on experiences or suggestions that you might have to those school districts that are really looking to engage with local or national organizations in this way to support something new in their district. Jess, could we maybe start with you?
Sure. I would say if you were just a local school district, not a part of a larger program or nonprofit, your best bet really is going to start with local volunteers. So think about all of the parents of the kids that are in your school, or family members, loved ones, what have you. And a lot of times for some companies, the awareness of potential places that need help, or, hey, there's a school district that I've been, what have you, comes from the employee base. And so I think the question was talking about, this black hole. Yes, it does seem like there's a black hole. I will apologize on behalf of all of us, but there's just a lot. And so, if you can get folks who are volunteering and more, then that shows, whomever the appropriate office is, that maybe there's something here. There seems to be a lot of our employees are spending time in this particular school, particular area. And then sometimes there's programs that perhaps you might not get corporate support from, but sometimes there's localized support. Or like the mentorship program that Lina was talking about. And I will say, I don't know the back end, but it sounds like it's something that you can kind of take it and use it in different locations. Lina, please correct me when it's your turn if I'm wrong. And so other companies might have other similar types of content that you can kind of take it, here it is in the box, and then you can present it that way. And then the other piece I would say is contacting some of your local cultural or educational institutions, because most corporate entities are going to work through them. We're not going to work directly with the school district when it comes to funding. And so if they know that there's an interest, if they know that you're asking questions, when an opportunity comes up, then they can have that conversation with their corporate partner and say, hey, XYZ school district has an interest. It kind of aligns to what you're trying to do, and you can think about going about it that way as well.
Great. So to summarize, maybe start local, start small, start grassroots, and really seek out those connections with those that are really directly a part of your school district already. That's great, Jess. And Lina, it is your turn now, so I'd love to hear maybe just a minute or so if Jess kind of got it right there, and any other suggestions that you have for these districts.
So everything Jess just said, and I would just also add that we've recognized that technology is scary to a lot of educators and people in general, especially with new technology around AI, AR, blockchain, a lot of this language that isn't it's not every language that every educator can speak. And we decided to partner with the Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and we launched a program called Digital Empowered, where basically it's a forum in various cities that we launched that brings together cross-sector leaders in local communities on how to leverage digital technologies like blockchain, cloud, IoT, robotics, and really help to create societal change. And I'm hearing some background.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Go ahead and continue. It's mild on our side.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So we launched these forums, and it's been really great not only to be able to bring our leaders who can talk about technology and really break it down, but also to be able to talk to teachers and nonprofits and NGOs about what this technology is, what it can do, and how it can benefit their respective organizations and communities. So that's been a really successful forum that would love to provide some information if anyone is interested in learning more. We typically have the recordings and the learnings and papers available online as well. But that's been an innovative way for us to look at this on a systemic level, to be able to bring together leaders in local communities to really work together and learn more about how, almost like a mini Go IT, about using a technology solution to help advance the Sustainable Development Goals, but really more about how it affects your own communities. So going back to what Jeff said around the grassroots, that's absolutely where you need to start.
These are phenomenal, right? We're getting a lot of really great sort of big ideas and some specific thoughts as well. And I can see in the discussion that, our listeners are excited by a lot of these suggestions. And Annette, I'd love to close out with you and your thoughts. If, outside of your engagement with EIE and Dell, do you have suggestions or ideas, or maybe things that you're excited to try now to just continue engaging with different organizations around you to benefit your students and educators?
One thing is that I've learned that you have to just start asking, be bold, beg. I've reached out to several corporations and I just said, this is my situation. This is what I want to do. This is what I need. What do you have? How can we partner? What can I give you? What can I do for you in exchange essentially for funding or for materials? Just recently, I did reach out to another company and I just said, do you have any ways I can get my foot in the door? And they said, hey, there's a grant available. It's not huge, but it's something. And so I went for the grant. The process was very clear, and I was awarded the grant. It was only $1,500, but you know what? It's something, and it's getting more available to kids, and that's what I want. But whether it's me or my district or my teachers, you just have to start asking. I did find out, however, the hard way, that sometimes districts put up roadblocks. And I found out that I was supposed to ask permission to apply for the grant before I applied for the grant. Didn't know, so I begged forgiveness. But you know what? We got the money. We're going to get the materials. But it's being bold and getting out of your comfort zone. I never thought I would just go to companies and say, hey, I need stuff. I need more of, whatever. And it's not for me personally. It's because kids need this. And yeah, we do have a huge discrepancy socioeconomically in our district. And we have 135 languages spoken. So that's the other thing, is even something like translation services that we need to pay for. But it's just asking. And it's being brave and taking that first step. And 5 years ago, I would have never seen myself doing it. But after I saw what it could do, and honestly, it truly is, it's that partnership between Dell and EIE and Kent School District that made me feel empowered to say, hey, if you don't ask, you don't know. So just start asking. And it's been brilliant. I can't thank you enough, truly.
Well, what a closing argument. I know we went a little over, and Kelly, I hope you don't mind, because my hope is that all of the listeners today have, maybe realized that there are different ways to work together with local organizations that you didn't even know were possibilities. And I implore everyone to take a page out of Annette's book. Be bold, ask, beg. It's up to you if you want to ask permission or beg forgiveness. I won't advise you there. But I hope that you have seen some possibilities and heard some ideas that have inspired you. I know that, at EIE and at the Museum of Science, it brings us so much joy, and, to see that, we are able to sort of, bring these different entities together to give these experiences to students and educators. So, Dr. Annette Venegas from Kent School District, thank you. Lina Klebanov from TCS, thank you. Jess Anderson from Dell, thank you. And Kelly, thank you for giving us this opportunity. This has been great.
Well, thank you all so much. And one of the things I would just encourage you to go back into that discussion and answer some of the questions that came up, because you're right, it was fabulous and it was really helpful there. So I just want to thank you all and encourage you to come back and join. You can just click on that